Hello everybody and welcome to the first breakout talk for this year's B-Sides. I'm here to talk to you today about how we can use Home Assistant, NodeRED and Splunk to make an awesome smart home. So my name is Tom West, I am a PS consultant at Splunk, and I'm also very proud to be a Splunk Trust member, being part of such an amazing group of people. So before we go any further, really go right back to the beginning and have a look at exactly what a smart home is. Now, marketing have got very many different definitions of exactly what a smart home is. It's got Bluetooth, it's got Wi-Fi, then it's smart. Well, I kind of like to look at it as any device which has the ability to be controlled by a secondary digital device would be a smart device, and therefore, and if you have that in your home, then technically yes, I guess you would have a smart home. So how that how that device could be controlled, maybe via a mobile app, might be by a smart speaker such as Amazon Alexa, via a web service such as If This Then That, maybe not If This Then That so much, corporate greed and all, but there are very many different web services out there. Or you could go all in and get yourself a smart hub, something from Hubitat, or go more DIY with Home Assistant. No surprises, if you're here then you've seen the talk name. We're going to be talking about Home Assistant today, and really what I look at as far as Home Assistant is concerned is that's the nerve center for my smart home. And really, why to have a hub in the first place? For me, I kind of see it as having two real main features and then some advantages as well. So the first one being, well, a smart home hub offers automations, being able to do very simple, basic things such as if motion is detected in a room, turn on a light. When motion is not detected anymore, turn that light off. And but you can go really down the rabbit hole as far as automations are concerned. You can tailor them to different parts of the day, identify different routines that you have at home. You could even use your automations to automatically set and unset an alarm based on using sensors that you may have in the house. And the other really big feature for a smart home hub is integrations. So if you don't have a hub, then you're more likely to get tied into a specific ecosystem such as Philips Hue or SmartThings or something along those lines, and just buy devices from them. You tend to use one app, maybe use a smart home speaker, maybe the odd web service, but all in all you're going to be tied into a single ecosystem. With the smart home hub, that's not necessarily the case. You'll find that different manufacturers produce all manufacturers tend to produce awesome tech, but you'll find that specific companies and vendors will produce better products for the type of thing that you're looking at. If I look at Philips Hue, for instance, they have a great set of lights. They're a bit on the expensive side, but their motion sensors are brilliant. If we look at companies such as Govee, they're a lot more cheaper. Yeelight as well. A lot more different companies offering arguably better quality products at a much cheaper price. The other advantage of having something like Home Assistant is that you tend to run it on-prem, so you're not tied into a cloud service. That makes it more secure for yourself, but also if that service decides that they want to start switching their model and use more of a subscription-based service, then you're not going to be the victim of that because you're running everything on-prem on your own hardware. I think one of the more common examples of that at the moment is I think Samsung Smart Things are kind of looking as though they're going over to that model. It wouldn't surprise me if in the future we see more vendors doing that. But hey, you're using a home hub and everything is on-prem, so that's great. The other thing for Home Assistant is the software's free. There's nothing to pay for it whatsoever. It's just something that you can download. It's open source, and you can just fit it on a Raspberry Pi. So Home Assistant is free, but the software and the hardware to run it obviously isn't. But you're looking at a Raspberry Pi and a memory card and something to power it, and that's basically it. It's as cheap as you're going to get for what is really an awesome product. And just to show you how awesome it is, we'll dive into a quick demo now and have a look at exactly what Home Assistant does. So if we look at Home Assistant, this is a very, very basic dashboard. One of the things that Home Assistant allows you to have is different dashboards for rooms, occasions, whatever it may be. And this one, all we can see is just a single light. And let me just show you that light here. That is in the that's in this corner right here, and we can see that it is currently on. If we select this light button here, we can see that it turns off. Select it again, turns it on, and it's almost it's very responsive. There's not much lag there at all. We can also control the brightness of it. We can even go and change the color, whether we want it blue, pink, red. And the quality of my camera is not amazing, and it is quite dark in the room outside of where I am, so it's not going to look amazing, but you kind of get the idea of exactly what it's like. But this is just a very basic way of being able to control a light. Typically you won't go into a dashboard to go and do that, but it shows you that it's there in the event that you actually need to do something. If we look into a little bit more in-depth view, this is what this is what one of my dashboards looks like. So this is visualizing the room that I am in at the moment. So it's quite late in the evening, and thankfully it's saying it's automatically detected that I'm not actually working. We've also got various different settings. I've got one here which is a drop down of different conditions for the room, whether there's enough daylight to mark it as daylight, whether it's dark, whether we're in the evening, or whether it's at night. We can see here we've got a motion sensor, and it's currently identifying that motion has been detected, and there we go, it's gone into clear. So that will change if I just move my head backwards a little bit. There we go, we've got detected again. And we can see a time chart of daylight in the room, and we've got the ability to control the lights within the room as well directly here. We can see a historical view for motion in the room, and we've got some information regarding the plug, the outlet that I'm using that I've got my Mac plugged into at the moment. So if we go into what an automation actually looks like within a Home Assistant, this is a very, very basic one. So it's basically just going to do what you saw the light do a minute ago, turn on if there's motion. So we give the automation a name, we set a specific trigger. In this case we're looking for when that motion sensor detects motion. We can add a condition, we can add multiple triggers if we want to, and then the action here is just to call a script to turn that light on. And that script looks very, very similar to this, but having it in a separate area means that we can perform that routine in many different ways, however we want to. So NodeRED, where does NodeRED fit into all of this? Well, NodeRED is what I like to say. I like to use NodeRED for the more advanced automations. Home Assistant is really great at putting automations together. In some ways, you don't need NodeRED to do everything that you want to do, but NodeRED makes it a lot easier to put things to put more complex automations together. As you can imagine, that automation view that I just showed you, it becomes quite difficult to follow and to understand what's happening as that script's being run, whereas NodeRED doesn't give you that challenge. It is quite low code, so you don't need to be a developer to put things together. It is browser based as well. It's actually hosted on the same Raspberry Pi as a NodeRED application within Home Assistant, and the reason it's able to do that is it's really lightweight. So if we just go and have a look at exactly what that looks like, we can go into here, and we've got a very basic flow. I'll just go and show you that light once again, and we can see in this case you have different nodes that you just kind of link together to put a flow, and these nodes, I kind of look at them as two separate types. You've got your trigger nodes, and they're the ones that are going to start a flow, and then you have any event nodes that follow on from there. In this case, the trigger is a button that we select there, and we can see that it's going to turn a light on, it's going to reset the message, it's going to set a delay of 5 seconds, and then it's going to turn it on again. So turn it off first, delay, and turn on. And each of these, you can see that we've got a branch. We're sending the message to the HEC on the instance that I'm running. So just to show you that in action, select it, and we can see that we're actually getting statuses we're running through. We're sat at the delay for 5 seconds, and then at 5 seconds it turns it on again. And that is basically all there is as far as NodeRED goes. This is a really basic example. If we look at a more complex example, one here where we've got the lights to turn on and off various different times on random colors, and we can see what that looks like. So it quickly goes from something that's quite simple and easy to something that's not quite as simple and easy, but the whole visual flow and being able to see statuses is exactly the same. So it's really easy to get going and put something really cool together. So where does Splunk fit into all of this? We've got our tool to automate our house. We have our we've got all our devices that are hooked in, everything's running fine. Why on earth would we want Splunk? Or something like Splunk? It doesn't have to be Splunk, you could use InfluxDB and Grafana. Why would you want to use something like that? Well, there's a few key use cases that I like to put together. You may have your own, but for me, being able to see things in a historical way, in an easy way, I really like. Then there's alerting. So if we go as things go wrong, and they will go wrong, being able to alert on that and identify different things, it's really useful and saves a lot of time being able to do that. And then we go on to integrations. You'll be able to extend your integrations beyond what a home hub can, and we'll see exactly what I mean with that as well. And the main one, going back to historical view, is because things go wrong. It's free software running on a Raspberry Pi. It's not going to run right every single time. I've previously used a Samsung SmartThings hub and have still had things go wrong. Things do not go right all the time. So being able to view those exactly what's happening in something like Splunk, being able to alert on when those things are going wrong, makes life so much easier. If you go and have a search on Google, if you go onto YouTube and look for Home Assistant, everyone will say it's great, but you'll end up investing a lot of time and effort making sure it still works because things go wrong. And that's where Splunk comes in. So the key one being alerting. So whenever there's an error with a connector, there's an error with an integration, there's an error with the device itself, then being able to identify those, alert on those, makes life so much easier, because you will find yourself not walking into a room going, why did that not work? Or look in the middle of the night and go, oh, this isn't quite right. And that's the last thing you want to be able to do. Being able to be told about it well in advance of that is really useful. And the age-old missing host becomes apparent here as well. So when devices drop off, because again they do, being able to visualize when they've being able to alert on when they have dropped off is really useful as well. And being able to see device statuses. So if you go back to the dashboard that I just showed and what's going on in the room, what statuses everything's at, being able to trend on that much easier it is really useful as well. And then you can start to pick out abnormal behavior and apply things maybe like the machine learning toolkit to it as well, to identify when a specific status hasn't fired, or if something has fired and it shouldn't. Off the top of my head, identifying motion in your kitchen at 2 a.m. maybe something that you want to that you would class as abnormal behavior, unless it's with a baby, in which case you would definitely expect it. So as we go on to extended integrations, everything runs on its own network, whether it is a network like Z-Wave or Zigbee, in which case they're generally quite closed in and self-managed. But a lot of them, certainly a lot of the cheaper devices, use Wi-Fi. and being able to bring your Wi-Fi logs in. I certainly do. I use an Asus Wi-Fi network, and being able to pull all those logs in allows me to see when things are not going right with my Wi-Fi network, which is quite a key reason why things may not be running right in the first place. You may end up having a look and being alerted because a light hasn't turned on when it should have, whether a plug's not sent in a status regarding how much power it's using, and going, well, why is that not happening? And the clear reason may be that your Wi-Fi network, one of the nodes, isn't working quite right. So being able to pull all those logs in gives you a full picture rather than just a picture regarding your home hub and your other devices there. So that's really helpful. And then also bringing in data from your other servers. I've got a Pi-hole DNS server running on another Raspberry Pi, and being able to pull that in as well, again, makes it a lot more easier for having an awesome smart home. So how do you set this up? How do you get that data into Splunk in the first place? Well, there are some awesome people that have gone and added all the code into Home Assistant already for you. All you need to do is just go and activate it, and that is as simple as going into the main configuration file for Home Assistant, which is configuration.yaml, and adding these 5 variables. So first of all, defining that you're using the Splunk connector, and then adding in what the token is, what the host is, what the port is, whether you're using SSL, and the name of your connector. That is literally it. There's nothing more to it, and it's really, really simple. Behind the scenes, everything will then just go and run and work. So how does this all look in the real world? How does this look actually within Splunk? Well, if we just go and have a look over the last 60 minutes from my house, and at the moment the current time is 8:47, and so it's typically, I've got a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old, so right now it's a quieter part of the time, and we can still see we're getting nearly 16,700 messages coming into Splunk within an hour period. Home Assistant is really chatty, and one thing that I would certainly advise anyone is to make sure that you've got a good backup routine going, because these events also write to disk, and they will quickly burn out a memory card. I'm currently at 4 months, and it's not killed it yet, but it's not going to surprise me if it happens sometime soon. But having all my logs into Splunk means that if that ever does happen, then I'm not losing all that historical data as far as what events have happened. So it's really noisy and really chatty. If we actually go into if we go and have a look at that light that we looked at earlier, and we just see how many events that one light is producing, we can see that there's 572 over the last 60 minutes. And what's quite useful is you can actually see when I started getting into this room. So we can see that it probably was around 8:15 in the evening, and I've been in here ever since. Would probably have a good guess that around 10 minutes ago was when I was messing around with that light, hence the spike there. And the information that we can see just coming through into Splunk in the first place really falls into 4 key fields. We've got the attributes, which is all the attributes associated with this particular device, and we can see we've got different device names. We've got domains, which are typically going to be classed as things like lights, sensors, binary sensors, things along those lines. And then we've got the entity ID. So usually with Home Assistant, it couples the domain and the entity ID together to produce a unique ID for that device, or that state, as it's called. And we can see here that the light of that light we've called Study Bloom, and it's got the value of 1, which means it's just on. If we look into the attributes, we can see things like what the color is and all that kind of stuff. And we're also getting other pieces of information, such as the link quality, so what the signal is like for that device at the moment. We've got things like the update state, whether an update is available as well. So we can see whether an update is available. We can track how long that may have been available as well if we've only manually identified it. And again, we can alert on that to say, yeah, well, an update is available for your device. So it's really handy being able to pull all that stuff in, and that's just for one device. Now, if we look at Home Assistant at NodeRED, we can go a little bit. We've got a different set of messages into Splunk this time. So we fired that routine once. We go back here and just double check what that was. We can see we've got two instances where the heck's going to get called. It's going to get called when the light is turned off and when the light is turned on. But we want to see what those messages look like, and that's what NodeRED does. Is it sends messages across the flow. So we can see here that we've got our message, and it's assigned the severity of info. So if we go on the first one, and as we would expect, because there's a delay of 5 seconds, there's a delay of 5 seconds in the event, and we can see all the details regarding the message as it was being sent through NodeRED. So the first one right after the light was turned off, and this is the information that that Home Assistant sent back to NodeRED. So we can see it's confirming that's the entity ID, that's the domain, and that's the service that's been called, in this case turned off. And as we would expect, the service here is turn on. So it's a really good way of being able to debug. There is inbuilt debug tools with NodeRED, but again, they're going to write. If you use those, they will write to your SD card and will quickly lose the run down as far as the life's concerned of that card. So really do recommend checking out using Splunk with this kind of stuff. It's really easy to set up and get started with, and you'll get a lot of data, a lot of value from that data as well. So I kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, but there are some other pieces of additional software that I use. Again, it's pretty much all free. The first one is something called Log2RAM, and this is a great little tool that is designed to change your var log directory in your OS to not be on the card, but actually to be on to write to RAM. And every 60 minutes it cycles and it clears that memory out, and that really will extend the life of your SD cards if you're using a Raspberry Pi, because you're not constantly writing to that card. Then, as I mentioned earlier, I use an on-prem DNS called Pi-hole, and this is a great way of being able to block ads. You can just set your lists of different URLs that you want to blacklist, and it will basically go and make those websites think that your ads are not are actually offline. So you get a much cleaner looking page if you're on a page that is not that will take a lot of tracking, a lot of ads, and throw them at you. Then it's a really great way of avoiding a lot of that. Also, the logs that come back from Pi-hole are brilliant as well. If you put these into Splunk, you'll get information regarding exactly what the traffic's like within your network, what's calling out to the website, to the internet. And personally, for me, 2 days ago, my internet was going out a lot, so I had to call my internet service provider, and being able to have the logs for Pi-hole in made it very clear when I was experiencing outages and how long those outages were, and that made it a lot easier to get the right kind of support that I needed. Then onto Nagios. Because I've got a lot of different devices, I use Nagios to basically just go and check the health of the network all the time. So just doing simple things like pinging on a regular basis and reporting what the status is for different switches, all the way through to running health checks on the Pis to find out exactly what's going on and if there's anything I need to be concerned about. Because I'm getting data from my mesh network, I'm sending those onto the Pi that's running Log2RAM and capturing them using syslog-ng, which allows it as a great temporary storage area to then use the Splunk Universal Forwarder on a Pi to send it up to my Splunk Cloud instance. All of those pieces of software were free. I think you probably could run all of them on a Raspberry Pi. If you've got a beefy one, then you could probably run it on the same one, but I would suggest maybe thinking about using a second one if you could. But definitely something to have a look at. Now, I kind of just touched on the basics, certainly as far as setting up Home Assistant and that kind of thing. There are a lot more. There's a lot more content available online to really dive down into this kind of stuff. They'll not look at Splunk and that kind of thing, but they'll show you how to set up the smart home in the first place. And the three that I really recommend are a YouTube channel called The Hookup, which is just brilliant. Most of the content on there is really useful and informative, depending on what it is that you're looking at, what you're after. All of it is not sponsored as well, so it's a really honest assessment of different things, and there's some technical dive-ins as well. Now, for even more technical dive-ins, I really do suggest checking out Dr. Zzz, who will do some really long videos to show you exactly how to set things up. There are other videos showing brilliant add-ons and things as well for Home Assistant as well, all the different apps that are available, different integrations, how to set up things like WLED, set up in individually addressable LEDs or pixel strips, as some other people know as well. So that's a really great channel to check out. And then one for the folks in the UK is a guy called Paul Hibbert, who will show you a lot of different ideas and show you a lot of different cheaper devices as well. So not having to spend top dollar to get the latest things. You could find other vendors that are producing exactly the same things, or sometimes even better things, at a cheaper price. And Paul's usually the person that will show you that. If you've ever heard of anyone say, "Oh, the Zigbee," or corporate greed, or anything along those lines, you check out his channel. That will answer a lot of questions for you as well. And that's me. Thank you very much for watching. If you do have any questions, I'm going to be online to answer any and all questions that you may have. You can find me on Slack on the community channels at Westy. You can email me at twest@splunk.com, and there's a Slack channel that you can go and ask questions on as well. B-Sides21 Smart Home, where I'll be more than happy to answer any questions you got. I really hope you've enjoyed it, and enjoy the rest of B-Sides. Thank you. Bye.